Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve, where communication matters. Join us as we discuss effective ways to communicate, bridge the gaps, and build long-lasting relationships within your business and life. Here are your hosts, Asha Prasad and Steve Harper.
Okay. So welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. I am Dr. Asha Prasad, and with me is my fantabulous co-host, Steve Harper. Steve, how's it going?
Fantabulous. Wait, me? That's awesome.
Yeah,
Nobody ever
you.
describes me as that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here as always. This is going to be a fun episode. What are we talking about today?
Well, we've been talking about coaching a lot, and because a lot of people, it's really interesting, right? Because you don't hear necessarily a lot of people talking about coaching, but it's kind of the secret weapon for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited today because what we're going to be talking about is, I think, probably a lot of the reason why you don't hear people talking about coaching. Exactly. So the topic that we're talking about is I'm embarrassed to admit that I use a coach. Now what? you know, so
Wait, is this just from my coaching clients that this question came, or the statement got said?
no,
I admit that I am embarrassed to work with Steve.
no,
No, I think
no, but
it's an
really,
interesting
yeah,
topic because I think that
yeah,
there's this stigma around it. Like,
yes,
you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, or you're, hard charging, employee, you should have these things figured out. Why in the world would you employ a coach? Right. And I
yeah,
think that I noticed it early on when I was an entrepreneur that there was, the people's response and reaction when I said, "Oh, I got this great idea for my coach." Be like, "You use a coach? Like,
exactly.
like,
Yeah,
why would you need a coach? Why do you need somebody to tell you what to do? Like, aren't you the person that's
yeah,
supposed to already know that?" It's like, well, no, I
yeah,
don't know everything, and I need that input and that guidance. But people's response in reaction to the topic of it was very interesting because I think a
yes,
lot of people have this misperception of it, and as we talked about on our previous episode, it's like people think that's just for athletes or
yeah,
some form of athletic professional athlete that needs help and guidance. But who would think about needing a coach in a professional setting? And you and I would
yeah,
have that perspective of everybody does, right? You can benefit from having a coach.
exactly.
And but why do you think people get embarrassed by it even to today?
Well, I think that there's this stigma of asking for help still. And
Yep.
especially like whenever you're the entrepreneur, it's like, well, you have your own business, so you should just know it. And or like if you're a director or manager, you should just know it. It's like, no, you don't. You grow into those roles. You grow
Yep.
in and you're constantly growing. It's never that you just grow into it and you just hit this plateau. It's like you're constantly growing. And how do you expect to continue growing or to learning how to do something if you don't have somebody there to help you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why people have issues with the whole thing about asking for support and help. But it's interesting because I always say to people because I had a client. I've worked with him for a couple of years now, and because he did not want anybody to know that he had a coach. Okay,
Mm.
he approached me. He said, "Asha," he said, "I really want to work with you, but I just don't want anybody to know that I have a coach." I'm like, okay, but he wanted me to sit in on meetings. I'm like, well, who am I going to be? Like, who am I supposed to
Yeah. What's
be?
my
Like,
purpose in this meeting?
I'm like, what do I just run and go get coffee or what? Like, what's going on here? So I said, he said, no, he said, we'll just call you an advisor. I said, okay, so you're okay with an advisor, but not a coach. Okay, got it. Advisor it is. And so it was really funny afterwards, and we had some great team meetings and that kind of thing. And I was explaining to him, I said, I said, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And I said, I understand that you're looking at me as an advisor, but I said, it always takes two hands to clap. And he just looked at me, he's like, what? What are you talking about? And I said, because I said it takes both hands. So, meaning that you've got to be able to come together, like like I was saying before, Steve, two is better than one. It's like you got to be able to come together in order to make a sound or to make any movement or to make any kind of headway. It takes both your hands to clap, right? You cannot clap with one hand. You've got to know the right hand needs to know what the left hand's doing and vice versa,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, so I was explaining to him that there was nothing to be embarrassed about. And eventually he did, come out to his team that he was actually a coaching client of mine. And but he was really embarrassed by this. And I think that it's very important that you realize that working together with somebody, like you're not going to figure things out just on your own. I mean,
Yeah.
we can figure out a lot of stuff, right, Steve? I mean, I know you figure out a lot of things on your own, just like
I don't know,
we think we
maybe.
do, right? We think we do.
Well, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, he didn't want his team to know, or didn't want whoever was in that meeting, because I think at the
Yeah.
end of the day, he feared of looking weak. Like,
Yeah.
kind of the
Yeah.
same component, like
Exactly.
why people are embarrassed. They don't want to look like they
Yeah.
don't have it all figured out. They don't want to,
Absolutely.
they don't want to, exude to other people that they don't have all the answers. And the reality is, does anybody have all the answers? And there's not a thing that you do in your professional life, or to a certain degree, your professional life, that couldn't be bettered by somebody else's input and feedback,
Yeah.
especially if that person is being paid to help you achieve some result, which is to be a better version of
Exactly.
yourself in some capacity, whether it's the delivery of your professional, perception out there, whether it's, better leadership style, whether it's better communication,
Yeah.
but even in your personal life, right? How to navigate and interact with the important relationships that you have, how to have a
Yeah.
better relationship with your spouse or significant other or your kids,
Yep.
how do you
Exactly.
build community, and all those things are, if you knew it and you were good at it, you probably wouldn't need it. But none of us are good.
Exactly.
We all think we're good, but the reality
Yeah.
is we're not. And I think at the end of the day, we're not willing to admit that we have these blind spots and these issues, because we
Yeah.
think it makes us look weak. When in fact, most people, when you acknowledge these things and you say, look, I
Hmm.
don't have it all figured out, I don't know how to get there, and I need somebody like Asha to
Yeah.
help guide me, people are like, now that person is committed. That person is
Yeah.
interested in being a better
Exactly.
version of themselves. They're all in at that point.
Yeah, you know what, Steve? And that's also, I mean, it really, you get out of your own way at that
Yeah,
point.
I
You
love
allow
that. Yep.
someone, you allow someone to help you. And whenever you say, okay, you know what? I don't have all the answers and I need help, I need guidance on this, then you really get yourself out of your own way. Because a lot of times we stand in our own way. I mean, we really do. Like, I know I do. Let me speak
I
for
do
myself.
too. Oh,
I
all the
stand
time.
in my own way a lot.
Right.
And it's one of those things, by working with a coach, it helps me chill out and just be like, okay, now I'm just going to get out of the way. Now, what needs to be done here?
That's
you
an official
know?
coaching term, by the way. Chill out.
Yes,
Chill out, bro.
I know exactly.
But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day,
Hmm.
that's important, and it is so critical, because we left to our own devices, and we can't get out of our own way because our ego doesn't want the help. Right at the end of the day,
Oh
and that's
gosh,
the
yeah,
that's the big challenge for a lot of people, is that their ego tells them they don't need it, and then the ego is
yeah,
also telling you you're going to look weak. You should be embarrassed by having a coach,
exactly.
and what it's trying to tell you is, well, you should know all these things, right? Or you should at least act
Hmm.
like you know these
Yeah,
things. And the ego is a slippery slide, kind of, really challenged, internal battle, right? Where
yeah,
you're really fighting with yourself about all the things that, these stories that we make up in our own head, and these perceptions
yeah,
that we're, thinking people are making, and we don't really have any basis of understanding or reality. But the ego loves to excel in that area, right? It loves to tell you the
yes,
worst case possible scenario of that.
yep,
So if you're an owner or CEO of a, entrepreneur of your own business, naturally, when, you're up and having a conversation with another entrepreneur, or maybe thinks or perceives that, you perceive they have everything figured out, and you're like, well, I don't want to tell them I don't. And, now I'm using this
right,
coach, which feels like I'm cheating somehow. And your ego
yeah,
is just loving that, right? Because at the end of the day, it's making you feel bad about yourself, when it really should be like, dude, whatever you need to do to make yourself a better version of
exactly.
yourself is the way to go. But the ego doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And you know what? That's one of the reasons why it's so important to keep our ego in check. Like, really recognize when our ego is flaring up, or having someone to tell us, hey, your ego, like you can't fit through the door because your ego's so big, that kind of thing. It's like,
That's why a coach is important, because they're the ones that will be like, oh, hey, I saw that head coming in, well, 5 minutes before
exactly.
you got here.
I know, exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, it's one of those things that, it's really important though. It really is important. There's nothing to be embarrassed about asking for help. There's nothing to embarrass. I mean, we all are learning. I mean, Steve, you've been an entrepreneur for many years. I've been an entrepreneur for many years. We're continuously learning still to this day.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it's one of those things. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing
No.
wrong with being in that learning phase. I mean, I think that life is all about that, and definitely in our professional careers, it's a journey. It's a learning journey, and we
Yeah.
learn along the way. And there's nothing wrong with asking for some support and help.
Well, and I always look at it from the perspective of a coach is someone that brings a unique perspective, right or wrong. They may not always have all the answers, but they are
Hmm.
there to be your sounding board. They're there to be your cheerleader. They're there to be the
Yeah.
guide and give you perspective in terms of the direction that you might want to take. And at
Yeah.
the end of the day, just like, LeBron James walking out onto the basketball court doesn't feel embarrassed that his coach walks out to show him a different technique on blocking or free
Exactly.
throws or pick any sport, and every single sport has a coach because they're trying
Yeah.
to get the last bit of greatness out of every one of their athletes.
Exactly.
And that, so when you look at it and you think, why do you do that? Because winning and getting the best performance is really the outcome. Well, in
Yeah.
life, that's pretty much the same kind of outcome. I want to be successful. I want to be able to enjoy my life. I want to be able to do something significant personally or professionally. Why wouldn't
Hmm.
you want somebody also walking out onto your court and helping
Exactly.
you get the best possible performance? And so I
Yeah.
think if people use that as kind of their, kind of their guide rail, if you will, and you feel like all of a sudden now, I don't want to admit that I'm using a coach, or I'd be embarrassed to admit that I use a coach. Really check yourself and ask, hey, am I am I really embarrassed, or is it my ego trying to play games on me?
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
really, you have nothing but the best response, which is I want the best possible outcome for whatever it is in your personal or professional life, and that person is paid to be there to help me get that. So
Exactly.
why wouldn't you consider that a valuable relationship? So, like you said, I don't think it's something to be embarrassed about. In fact, I think if more people were honest about it, you'd see how many people use folks like
Yeah.
us to help them get to that next level of
Exactly.
personal and professional success. And then you'd be like, oh, I need to join that party a lot quicker. Which, speaking of which, how could
Yeah.
people become, engaged and involved with us if they were like, hey, I think I like the mojo that Steve and Asha bring together. And if,
Hmm.
we're kind of like the dynamic duo, let's just be honest. Like if we were to work with a
Right.
potential client, what would they get from us would be this awesomeness times 10, right? From a coaching
Exactly.
perspective, because we want to see people be successful, be more
Yeah.
authentically happy in their lives. So how would people learn more about what we're doing and how to get engaged with us if they were curious
Yeah.
about what coaching could bring to the table for them?
So they can definitely go to conversationswithashaandsteve.com. Definitely, look on there, contact us through there, go to our Facebook, Instagram, reach
Yeah.
out to us, and we're definitely open to having a conversation with you to see how we could best help you. I mean, Steve and I are both very committed to seeing other people succeed. We want people to do and be the best that they can be. We're
Yep.
very passionate about that. So definitely reach out to us, and we'd love to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. Well, as you've probably noticed if you watched the last couple of episodes, where we're doing these themed, kind of concentration areas of focus because we know these are questions that are coming up. They've been proposed, by many of our listeners about what this, coaching is one topic. We've had several that have been put on the table, but this coaching one is interesting because we've had so many people ask us about it. What does
Yeah.
that really do? What does it mean? And
Yeah.
so the fact that somebody, put forward that it's kind of embarrassing to admit they have a coach was a great observation. So we
Yeah.
only hear that when you're actually part of our community and you're engaged with us. So tell us what you like, tell us what you areas that you'd like us to cover in the future, what you're pulling from these episodes, what takeaways you've got so that we can continue the conversation offline. So we always appreciate you guys listening to Conversations with Asha and Steve. It's an absolute honor for us to do this show, and we appreciate your whether you're watching it on video or you're watching or listening, I guess, listening on any of the podcast platforms. We are so grateful. So, Asha, another great episode. I really, really appreciate this one.
Thank you. Me too, Steve. I enjoy this, and I'm so glad that we Yeah, we're getting all these great topics to talk about and to share with people. So thank you so much.
Yeah, me too. I love it. All right, we'll be back again with another episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve very soon. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve. We love to hear feedback and questions from our listeners. Please feel free to visit our Facebook page for more tips and information. You can also email us directly at info@ripplecentral.com for more information.